I think as far as other people are concerned, the first thing is your family. If they support you, then you can keep on going giving this exam. But the moment they stop supporting you, then it becomes a lot harder for you to continue with this. So I think your family is really important when it comes to that.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update from Civil's Daily.
Hey everyone, welcome to Unheard, that is a Topper Talk series initiative by Civilsdaily. In this place, we are going to understand the journey that takes you from being an aspirant of civil services to becoming a topper. And today we are in conversation with Swati Sharma, who secured All India rank 17 in UPSC Civil Services 2019. So, Swati, does rank still seems like unreal, or the feeling has come to reality for you?
Rank 17. But yeah, I don't think I've been able to process it that well as of now. Plus, I'm still in the academy from Shimla, so I'm still pretty busy. So I don't think I've had time for it to actually sink in. But
Okay.
I guess it might in a few days.
So you were in academy when the result came, right?
Yeah.
So did you check the result, or somebody came to you and told you about the result? What was the 5 minutes before scenario before the result actually?
We were actually in class. We were studying commercial accounts at that point, and we have usually have this tea break at 11 something. And the first thing we do is check our phones. So we all came out, we checked our phones, and we thought it was a fake PDF initially, but turned out it was real. So I think there were 6 people from my batch who got selected. So we were all just yelling and all that stuff.
Oh, nice. Okay, Swati, my first question here is like, how do you feel that the last 4 years of particularly, when I'm talking about this journey of UPSC, how has these last 4 years changed you as a person? One thing is when we're talking about it is academically, right? That is true because you learn a lot of things. That is true. But as a person, how has this, journey changed you and helped you become better?
Academically, definitely you gain a lot. Your worldview changes completely because I think before that we all tend to live in a bubble. And I can say that for people or my friends who have never gone into the civil services or haven't even thought about preparing for it, they do tend to, some of them live in a bubble. So I think that's one of the greatest advantages that this gives you. And the fact that you get to know so many things does change a lot in you. And I think other than that, in the entire process, one thing it teaches you is patience. So there's that, and you understand things better, you become more empathetic, more, you know it's, you learn to work hard as well, and you learn to not take things granted in life, and you're like, you need to put your best foot forward. So it makes you stronger.
Yeah, true, true. Okay, Swati, so this was actually your fourth attempt. And, in this long process, was there some time or was it some, phase when you felt like, okay, now this is enough. I'm not doing anymore? Because, the kind of pressure, the kind of trauma that an aspirant goes through is a lot. And only an aspirant can actually understand. So, were there such moments in your preparation, what you can call as tough points or low points in your journey?
I think last year, before the mains result came, I had decided that if I don't get through last year, then I would not continue perhaps. And had I not cleared the mains that year, I wouldn't have given this attempt either. So I think that does come. And I had actually started to teach in Delhi University at that point, because I was like, I need to start looking for other options that are out there. What if it doesn't work out? But fortunately, I cleared the mains, and then I got into the final list, and that made me think, okay, I perhaps can improve a little more. There's only up from here. I've got nothing to lose. So that's when I decided to appear one more time.
Okay. So, is it, because when you're taking such decisions and you're, progressing in your journey, there are some reasons, your personal reasons, your personal purpose, which keeps you going. That is one part of it. Then there are also people who are involved in that journey who, make sure that you stick to your goal, you do not forget the purpose for which you got into this journey, and like your mentors who make sure that you correct your mistakes and go ahead. So just talk about these people, talk about these purposes, your internal motivation here.
I think as far as other people are concerned, the first thing is your family. If they support you, then you can keep on going giving this exam. But the moment they stop supporting you, then it becomes a lot harder for you to continue with this. So I think your family is really important when it comes to that. Then your friends, it could be your friends who are preparing for UPSC along with you, or they could be your friends otherwise. But you need that positivity in life that that helps with the frustration, because it comes with a lot of frustration when it doesn't work out, when things aren't going the right way. So I think those two things are very important, that it works out, that they're there to support you and all of that. Other than that, internally, I think you need to know yourself that you really want to do this. It's only then that you would be able to put in the effort and keep trying until unless you achieve that goal. So that kind of drive also needs to come from within.
So, what is your message here for the aspirants, who are actually preparing right now? How to deal with that kind of mental pressure, or how to deal with that kind of mental depression that one goes through this preparation actually?
That's very difficult. But I would say that one thing you need to know is that keep in mind that the end goal you're striving for would make all of this go away for a while, I guess. So keep the goal in focus, and take these things as something which are part of the process. We tend to think that these things are, oh, separately they're happening, so we have to deal with UPSC and this. But this is all a part of the UPSC prep. They also, I think, somehow the exam is designed this way that they want to check how much stress you can deal with during your entire prep. And eventually it's not the end goal, right? Even if you get the job, there are stresses that come with it. So I think when going through that process, it all adds up to make you, worthy of getting there. So don't take it as something that you need, that's negative or something. Just take it as a learning process, something that you need to deal with. And I think in that also, with mental health, for example, you learn how to cope with that as well. So you develop mechanisms which will help you throughout your life, even if you clear or don't clear, but you get to learn from that. So take that as well as a learning experience.
Yeah, that is very nicely put there, Swati. Okay, let's talk about the stages here. The first stage is prelims, and a lot of aspirants are actually scared of prelims, especially since 2017. The kind of prelims paper that are coming, people are actually getting sleepless nights over them. So that, was it your also one of the tough stages, or was it some other stage that you felt was more scary than the prelims? And again, I need you to highlight some hacks or some strategies that the students can follow in the next 2 months, particularly because the prelims is in October. So what would you give them advice here?
Prelims was the scariest part for me as well, because it's just so much on chance, right? You can't write something that you know, elaborate on it and expect ki, okay, the other person will get your point. You have to be exactly right in that. So it is very scary, and given the kind of questions they tend to ask at times, you don't even know what the source of those questions are. So it is very scary, but I do think eventually when you clear prelims, then you think mains is the scariest. When you clear mains, you think that interview is the scariest. So at every stage you're going to find it to be scary. So I think you should just put to rest the fact that it's scary. It's a scary process, just accept it. I think that helps a lot, because that's like one thing you've dealt with already. It's scary, I accept it, I'm going to move on. So there's that. Other than that, like, since there are just 2 months left, by this time I think I usually start a second round of test series. So one thing that I do is I don't do a lot of test series. I used to do pick only two, and I used to mark back in March. I used to start my test series for the first time. From that, I used to mark questions that I either didn't know at all, or that I thought I would need to revise because they're hard to retain or something. I used to write those question numbers on top of the paper. And then on the second time, if I had time, I'd go through them again, mark the questions which I still thought were difficult. And then in the last, before, I think in May, so the exam used to happen in June at that point, so in May I used to go through only the marked questions. So the idea is that instead of doing a lot of questions, you do a reasonable amount of questions and you revise that information, because there's no point of doing, say, 10,000 questions if you would never look at them again and won't retain them. So I thought that worked out better for me, that I was able to revise them. So there's that. And obviously static focus on that, because a lot of times some questions you don't know, but you can deduce from whatever static knowledge you have what the answers would be. So do not forget static, because I've seen people focus too much on current affairs, like that's the only thing they'll do in the end, just do current affairs and all. So don't do that, keep a balance of both the things.
Okay, okay. So, and what was your attempt strategy in paper? Like, you were somebody who would attempt all the questions, or somebody who would have a, balanced approach? Okay, I'll only attempt where I know 110%, I'm sure there.
I never attempted more than 75 questions in
Okay.
all the four attempts. And I would say that I did pretty well, in the sense that I think this time from various answer keys, I think I was getting 117 in pre after
Hmm.
attempting 75 questions. And I think in
That's a
2016,
nice
I had
score.
124 in 2016. So the thing is that you break your attempting strategy into three parts. So the first thing you do is you only mark the questions you're 100% sure. So you only mark those. Then in the second round, you mark questions you're slightly sure about, 50 to 60%, and you think, okay, I can take this risk, and then you mark those. And then in the third round, if you have the risk appetite and you think, okay, logically this is what it should be, then only you mark those. And in that third round, you probably mark a lot fewer questions, but that's fine. Because, see, at the end of the day, you don't need a very high score, you just need to clear the cutoff, right?
Yeah.
So I think, don't go into the idea of, I know a lot of people start telling you, oh, probability wise this is how much
Yeah.
risk would pay off and all of that. Don't go into that. In that moment, what you feel is right, do that. I tend to play a little safe as well, but I think that worked for me.
Mhm. Right. I think it is necessary to have that balanced approach. I think your idea of it is very nice. Okay, before moving on to Mean's question, Swati, I guess your hobby includes traveling, right? Yeah. So just tell me one of your favorite place that if you had the opportunity right now to go and visit, and why would that place be your favorite?
uh, I would say New York. I mean, it sounds very cliche to say that,
Yeah.
but I think the place just has that kind of energy. I didn't want to leave. I thought that I had very little time in New York, but like I was there for a week, I think, but I thought that was very little time. The place just has that kind of an energy, and you'd want to stay. And I don't know, maybe we see these things, and then when you actually get there, then so I think I just really like that. Other than that, if I had to choose, I'd probably choose Italy for the pizzas. But yeah.
Nice. Because, whenever you're preparing for UPSC, you have this kind of a mindset that you have to isolate yourself from the world. Was it your also kind of a mindset that, no social media, no places that I would go? I would just sit in my room and study for long hours, and that's it.
Oh, I wouldn't have survived that, honestly speaking. I am the kind of person who, after every 2 hours, needs a half an hour break.
Okay.
So, what do you do in that time? You check your phone or you talk to your friends or something. I think it's important at times to, unwind a little and do it. So, either you pick a day in the week that you just go out or something, but you regularly need to find time to refresh yourself. Otherwise, the frustration becomes too much. So, I always made sure there was enough time for me to, do recreational things as well. I like to read, so I would pick up a book that I would find half an hour a day to read. So I think that's important. So don't, it's not necessary that you isolate yourself completely, but at the end of the day, a balance needs to be maintained definitely. So you devote more time to your studies, but do not let yourself get bogged down by the idea of that you need to isolate yourself, because a lot of time a lot of times people don't develop that organically. They do it because they've been told that in UPS you need to isolate yourself, so
True.
let it go organically and figure out what works for you, what doesn't work for you.
Yeah, true, true. Swati, it's like you were already a rank holder, that is rank 278, and this year you got rank 17. So, what is that journey? When we're talking about going from 278 to 17, what changed? What changed in this specific attempt, and especially when we're talking about mains, because mains is the real key here, right? So, what changed in your main strategy here from 278 to 17?
I think one of the important things is that mains is not just about answering the question. You really need to think about what the checker thinks as well. So do not leave any empty spaces. That's one advice that one of my friends, I think ranked 38, Lakshya Singhal, last year, he told me that I would never leave a page even if I'd finished my word limit. If I was leaving one fourth of a page, I just felt uncomfortable, so I just filled the entire page. And I followed that strategy of his this year, and I think it helped. Other than that, one thing I followed was, if they ask you one question, you answer one thing extra. So for example, if they're asking you the problems of a situation, you do give way forward no matter what. Like, even if they haven't asked for it, you do that. If they're asking two things in the question, you answer three. That's important. Keywords are very important. Giving examples, if you can, give examples from stuff that's in the news currently, that also helps a lot. So in a way, just put up names of schemes and things. So it's not just like you have knowledge that you've just learned up, you also have the ability to apply it and make connections from the real world, right? So I think that works a lot.
Okay. And when we're talking about means, again, what is your strategy when we're talking about the static portion versus your strategy towards handling currents, specifically in mains here?
Static, I think there are a lot of standard books that you can make notes from right from the start. For example, for mains, what I did with history was, that thick India Struggle for Independence by Vipin Chandra.
Yeah, yeah.
So when I was reading it, I could sense ki, oh, this page has information regarding this question that I could myself come up with. So I would just take pictures of that page, and that was an entire answer waiting for me right there. If a question UPSC did come up with, right? So whenever you're reading something, especially for mains, you read it from the point of view of answering a question. One of that thing is important. The other things, the other topics that are in news, for example, so you don't know what they might ask, because at times they just pick the topic and form any question. So whenever you see a topic, don't study it just from the point of view in the news, like this issue is happening. No. So you make notes for its background, you make notes for its evolution. For example, if it's a body, for example, I think they asked about Niti Aayog and Planning Commission at one point. So you talk about the evolution, you make notes for that, you make notes for the pros, the cons, the problems people are facing, what the government is doing to fix those things. So that's where all the committee reports and all come in, which you can put into your answers. And ultimately, from your own side, you have to put in way forward, or suggestions for improvement. So I think if you make notes from approaching a topic from all angles, that helps, because then no matter what they ask, you'll have something to write. So that's very important. And I think for static, from the syllabus, I think you need to really read the syllabus. You pick up the syllabus and then you make notes from every topic. That's why Civils Daily actually helped me, because I think on your website, you on your blog,
Yeah.
you have those syllabus wise topics, and you have static as well as current affairs attached to those things. So I made notes from that. That helped quite a lot. So you put in the effort. It takes about a couple of months to actually do this if you're doing just this. So you take the time to make those notes and filter the information as well, so you have a very concentrated set of notes ready for you to revise when the time comes.
So you're a notes person basically.
Yeah. I think it's important, because in the end also, then the material that you have becomes so much that you can't revise it. Obviously you need to plan in such a way, you in even in the last moments you can't revise everything, so you need to grade your notes as well, that this is the most important, this is less important. So that sort of planning also goes into it.
Yeah, and basically notes for prelims and mains are basically one, right? Or you had a different approach to them?
I had a different approach to that, completely
Okay,
different. Prelims, I didn't make much notes
okay,
because enough things are available in the market which are already in a very concise form. It's all
mm,
factual. What's the point of writing factual stuff again? It's already
yeah,
written somewhere
true,
else, right?
true.
Mains, because you need to collate information from different places and analyze different approaches or different angles to a topic, so you need to make those separately, so you can't really have common notes. I couldn't have common notes for that.
Okay, cool. So that is, a good strategy you've actually laid down for future aspirants there with respect to notes making and mains preparation. Okay, Swati, there's one more interesting aspect in your, profile here is that you, whenever an aspirant is filling up DAF, they're actually very confused about service preferences. So
Right.
it's like continuously they are being asked, as a mentor I've been asked this question again, what should be the service preference that I should follow? And basically there's this one clear format that everybody follows, first IAS, then IPS, then IFS, something like that. But you
Right.
were very pretty clear about the services that you wanted to go in, right? Please
Right.
just give me some details about that.
I think you need to know yourself really well to make that choice. A lot of times we make these choices based on what the society thinks is best. Like
Mm-hmm.
even now, a lot of people have been calling me and asking me why I didn't put IAS first.
Yeah.
So my simple answer is I just didn't want it. I didn't think I could do as good a job there as I could in the foreign services. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the simple reason I chose it, because in the end of the day, you are the one who has to live your life, not anybody else. So I think when you're making these choices, do consider yourself as well, what you want. In fact, people also ask me why I didn't put IRS or IPS right now. I'm in audits right now. So
Mm-hmm.
after being in audits for about 8 9 months, I realized that I'm good in this place. I can do really well here because it's a lot research oriented. Like when you're auditing, you need to know a lot about the topic. So when you start, especially when it's a scientific audit, so you need
Mm-hmm.
to really research those topics and get into the nitty gritties of the entire thing. And
Mm-hmm.
I think perhaps because my background is in economics, and so that and research interests me, so I thought that made sense for me. So that's why I didn't put anything else. So I think you need to know yourself, you need to know what your skills are, and
Okay.
that's how you make that decision.
Okay, because you don't usually find that kind of clarity in many aspirants the way you actually are talking about. So that's very commendable, actually. Okay, let's talk about your interview here. Can you just give me some brief, a brief idea about how your interview went? What was the panel like? What were especially your low points in the interview? What were your high points in the interview? Just a small, description there.
Well, the interesting thing about my interview this year was that I couldn't prepare for it at all,
Okay.
because I was in training and we had an attachment with RBI in Bombay.
Mhm.
So we came back to Shimla on the 17th of February, and my interview was on the 20th. So I didn't have much time. I think I studied a few of my notes from last year at the Chandigarh airport before
Mhm.
going to Delhi. And
Mhm.
I guess it's just, I was just fortunate that the notes that I read, some of the questions came from there, so I could use that. But otherwise, I would say that my interview wasn't very fact based. It was more like a conversation. I had Bhosle sir's board, and they focused more on my hobbies. So that way I could handle it a lot better. One thing is that because I wasn't able to prepare a lot, I didn't
Mhm.
have any stress. I went in there and I was like, let's see what happens. I'm just going to be honest and just going to be myself.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I think the time before that, I was a lot worried about what I'm saying, how will they perceive it during the interview. And I think that messes you up quite a lot, because then your mind is doing two things. It's worrying about what you're saying and it has to think about the answers as well. So it's not a good place to be in. So I
Mhm.
think for people who would be going for interviews eventually, when you enter that room, leave the worrying bit outside. You've done all you can. Now when you're there, just put your best foot forward. Don't worry about what they might think of your answers, if they'll mark you well enough, because then it will reflect in your answers. You won't be confident enough. You'll keep second guessing yourself, and that's not a good place to be in. My interview this time was very conversational. They asked me about, like, I've put reading as a hobby, so they asked me about how to promote reading in schools. They asked about Delhi's garbage problem, pollution, all of that. So those
Okay.
were easy to handle.
No, so actually, whenever you have this kind of conversational interview, it can go actually two way. Either it goes very nicely, or otherwise it completely goes into other direction where the examiner, the person who's asking the question wants something else, and you end up answering something else. So
Right.
yeah, so even that kind of a scenario is very difficult when you're sitting in the interview and you realize, okay, what you're answering, the other person is not liking it. Did those kind of things happen with you in the interview as well?
That happened with me last year. This year, I don't think that happened. I think there were moments where I didn't know a couple of answers, so I very honestly told them that I don't know. And at one point, I thought that I didn't know, but I could take a pretty normal guess at it because it was like semantics at the end of the day. And I did, and that was correct. So I think once one question is over, let it be over. Again, don't stress about what has already happened during that process or what might happen. Take every new question as a new beginning. So no stress. I think that's the most important thing. Don't stress at all in the interview. And I know it's easier said than done, but I think if you could try, that's important.
But that's a really positive attitude to have in the interview, actually. Uh,
Yeah.
okay, Swati. Okay, from your experience, now you've finished with the journey. You've actually got a rank 17. So from your experience, tell me three mistakes that every aspirant should avoid.
Ooh, okay. Not planning well. You need to plan and make sure you have enough time to cover everything. Don't study everything. Study the things those that are important, and focus on the syllabus. The syllabus is actually important. Read the syllabus, especially for my optional. That helped me quite a lot, because on the syllabus in the both things, what I did was I wrote on the syllabus. I printed out a copy and I wrote on it what I needed to read from where, what page numbers also. I'd written that also. So I think that's important that you do that as well, because in the end that helps you a lot. Then you don't have to keep looking for better answers, I guess. Third thing would be, I can't think of anything. I'm sure I made more mistakes, but I can't think of anything right now. But I,
Like, I think two can also be good enough for people to avoid.
yeah.
Yeah, nice. Acha, this is for the people, right? You just said that you also made some mistakes. So, let's consider a hypothetical situation. I give you a time machine and you're allowed to go back in time 4 years back and talk to yourself, Swati, who's just starting to prepare for this examination. What advice are you going to give yourself there?
Prepare really well. I think if I could go back 4 years, I would. I wrote mains in 2016 and I left about 170 marks of the paper, and I missed the cutoff by 4 marks. So
Okay.
I for years have kept, saying to myself that if I'd only attempted, I wouldn't have had to give the other attempts after that. So complete the paper. It's very important. Time yourself and complete the paper. It is actually important that you attempt all the questions. It's a problem of mine. I can't finish. Last year I left out 35 marks. This year I left out 25 marks. But it's important because here every mark matters, because there are 10 people with the same score in the list. So I think the one thing that's very important is for mains, especially, finish the paper, cover most things in the syllabus, because it's hardly ever that UPSC steps out of that bound.
Yeah.
So you really need to listen to UPSC on that.
Yeah, right. True. That is there. Like you just talked about how you actually left some questions in your answer. So it's like, I guess, the quality matters more in this paper, I believe, rather than if you're talking about the quantity, because people have this perception that the more attempt you make, you'll get a higher score. Obviously that's true, but it is also what you write, the way you present your paper today, that is also really important, right?
Yeah, especially after the kind of paper they gave last year, it was a lot based on your own interpretation of the questions. So if you do not interpret the question right, you're going to make a mistake. Like, I
Mhm.
remember a friend of mine telling me about one of the questions he had attempted, and he attempted it from a completely different point of view than I did.
Mhm.
So I think if they start giving those kind of questions again,
Mhm.
you really need to be able to interpret what they're trying to say and then answer that question according to that. Other than that, definitely quality matters. There are certain things that you need to follow in an answer which makes it good. So don't
Mhm.
just start writing whatever you feel like an essay. It's not an essay answer. I think that's
Mhm.
one of the issues that people have. They start writing the answers like they're writing an essay, like in a flowing manner. There needs to be a structure to it. So you need to
Mhm.
have an intro which gives either the background or something. Then you need to see if you can divide the topic into different aspects, social, political. I think this is something that a lot of people do suggest, that you divide your answers into social, political, or if any other categories you can find. You do that, and then you give a distinct way
Mhm.
forward, so that there
Mhm.
is, it's
Mhm.
a good quality document. At the end of the day, they can just look at it and know that you know the topic well enough. If you're
Mhm.
writing it in a para form without any structure, you'd have to find the answer in that. So you just make the
Mhm.
examiner's life easy as well.
Yeah, that is there. One thing that I really wanted to know is, what is your take on the importance of online presence nowadays with respect to UPSC preparation? Because there is, I guess, too much material out there. So how do you fine tune that, and how do you make sure that, because it's always said that your sources should be limited, your scope of study should be limited. So with so much of information out there in the market, how do you make sure that you do not plan a confused strategy for your paper?
I think if you devote 1 month to it and
Mm-hmm.
see what's out there, you can very well guess what will work for you, what will not. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, you need to know what works for you. Everybody is different. So you can't say that this person's doing this, so it
Mm-hmm.
must be correct, or this person is not doing this, so it must be wrong. Anything can work for anybody. So you need to, explore all that's available and then see what works for you. A lot of times people are very good at learning factual things, some people aren't. So the information needs to be fed to them differently. So I think the fact that there's so much material available is a good thing, because you can pick and choose what works for you. So give it a month, explore all that's out there, and then decide what works for you. And then stick to it. Obviously, there's always an option to decide later on that maybe I should look at something else as well. But don't do too many things. Keep it limited, but make the right choice. Give it time, but make the right choice. Don't do too much, because also there's a lot of repetition, because everybody's giving you the same thing. There's no point of doing that. And every time you read it from a new source, it's not the same kind of retention that happens as reading the same thing again and again. So limit your sources, but explore pretty well before you choose those.
Swati, before I end this interview, the last question that I want to put up here is, since we talked about in the very starting, we talked about, is the feeling real or not. So let's end the very interview with the same question that Swati Sharma, IFS, describe the person for me for future. Describe that person.
Oh, I hope that's somebody who's confident and, worthy enough to represent the country. I think that's the only thing that I want, that I'm good at my job.
Okay,
And then I
nice.
keep learning, because there's one thing that I've learned after these 9 months of training. There's
Mhm.
always something you can do. This is not the end. If people think
Yeah.
you're into the service, it's done now, you can do whatever. But for career progression and to do your job really well, you need to keep learning on your own. They won't tell you to do it, but they have options available. So explore those options and do those.
It's like
So I hope it
learning
helps.
approach. Learning approach is something that you're never gonna leave, right? Nice. It was actually really nice talking to you, Swati.
Thank you.
And you gave a lot of ideas to the people, especially with respect to prelims and mains preparation. And the kind of strategy that you're talking about is something that people can connect to actually. So I would really like to thank you here, and also I would I would like to congratulate you and wish all the best for this new journey that you're going on now. And I really wish that you represent India with all the pride and all the right kind of person that this country needs at that foreign level. I really believe that you can do that. And it was a pleasure having you, and I would actually like to request you that if you could write your more detailed strategy that is regarding sources and all, we could actually print that on our website also. And if I could also request you to join Habitat to provide one-to-one counseling to the students also.
Okay, sure.
And yeah, and
I'll
thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. I hope it helps other people.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update from Civil's Daily.